All right, so we are going to get started with tonight's lesson. Again, we are coming from the book, The 52 Names of God, that we started last week. Tonight is week 2. It's the God who sees me, and the name is pronounced El Roi, and that's Elroi, but it's El Roi because I looked at the pronunciation they got on page 14. So, this name is very significant because it's only mentioned one time in the Bible. And that spoke to me, first of all. Um, the other thing that spoke to me is it was spoken and said by Hagar. I'm going to give y'all a Crenshaw version of Hagar real quick, right fast. So, Hagar is the maidservant slave of Sarah and Abraham. Sarah is unable or has been up until an old age unable to have a child. Back in those days, having a child was significant, and it was almost as if you couldn't or didn't have a child, something was considered to be wrong with you. So Sarah has her servant sleep with her husband. Her servant becomes pregnant and gives birth to a baby boy. In this time, that baby was considered to have been Sarah's baby because she owned the mother, um, Hagar. Sarah then later on becomes pregnant with her own baby. And now she has animosity and hatred in her heart towards Hagar and her child. And she tells her husband, Abraham, I want you to get rid of her. She got to go. Her and her baby got to go. I don't care if they're your kids or not. Begrudgingly, Abraham, trying to keep peace in his house, has them go. If you guys remember last year, we did, not last year, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we did lessons on the women of the Bible. I'll see if we can link those lessons from Hagar and also Sarah in here because I think those are very important. And it was more so when I talked about the lesson of Sarah, it was about the control. Now, let's bring us back to the name. It's very significant that this name is only spoken once because a lot of times, like last week we talked about, and Anita mentioned this, the name that we learned of God is the name that he gave himself. Other names that we will learn and hear, not all of them, but some of them, a lot of times are given by prophets. They're said in festivals. They are said multiple times. You hear multiple people using them. They're said by a man. In this particular instance, it's used once. It's used by a woman. It's used by a woman who was a slave. It's used by a woman who is in the desert, who is in the wilderness, who is lost, who is all these things. Um, and it's never said again. But God saw fit enough to put it in his word for us to know so that we can also use it, so that we can also have the relationship and be able to call on the God who sees us, just like Hagar did in the wilderness. So, this shows that God can and God will use anybody to make a difference. Because as a slave girl, Hagar was not seen as somebody of stature or somebody of even value beyond her ability to serve and to bear a child for Abraham and Sarah. She was a foreigner at that time. So this is during the time where she was an Egyptian woman. So Egyptians were slaves. So before the Hebrews became slaves and the Egyptians were slaves. So she was an Egyptian slave woman to the Hebrews, which was Abraham and Sarah. And she was running for her life because she didn't like the way that she and her child, well, she didn't like the way that she and her child were being treated, but she had been kicked out. Basically, from everything that she knew, she was looked upon and tossed out as if she was nothing. And at the time where this comes, where she says this, Ishmael, who is her son, is crying out. And anyone that has ever heard a child cry out in anguish because they are now out of food, they are out of water, and he is crying. Um, you don't even have to be a mother, but the cry of a child in that type of anguish does something to your spirit. And so as God hears him cry out, and the angel comes to her Um, she says this. She says it's the God who sees me. And the significance of this also is, I believe why it was only said once is because when God sees you, he sees you forever. He sees you in every circumstance. He sees you in every situation. He sees you in all that you're going through. And so you never have to say it again because the God who sees you will always see you. We ask for God, our healers. So we'll talk about that later on because we constantly need healing. We ask for God, our provider, because we constantly need provision. We ask for God in different names. And that's why I think it's so significant and important that we're going over the names of God because we can know that if we call on El Roi, how did I say I pronounced it? El Roi. We only have to ask for him once. We only have to say it one time because once he sees us, he will never unsee us. And that is what Hagar learned in this moment. Hagar was in the wilderness. Hagar was not in a good place. She was not in a happy place. She was not in a fruitful place. She was not in a place that was thriving. Her mental capacity probably wasn't right. Her finances definitely weren't right because she didn't have water or food for her child. She didn't have a home. She had nothing. And God told her to go back. He gave her a promise. He said, I am going to make your child like he's going to be a man of a nation. Like I'm going to give him multiple children. He's going to have an inheritance. He's going to have the things that he's supposed to have. I need you to go back. And she went back on faith. A lot of times we don't go back. We don't listen to the voice of God. And this is where faith comes in. She had to believe that the God who saw her was not sending her back to what she came from the way that she came. She could have easily said, just, let me sit out here and die. Let me just be in this place and me and my child, this is it. Or lead us somewhere else. But because God her told her to go back where she was coming from, she did it. She was obedient. How many times are we obedient to God when we don't want to be, when we don't understand it? This is where it says, lean not into your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him. And she believed the promise that God gave her, even though nothing in her circumstance looks like it was going to happen the way that God was saying that it was. Nothing was looking like it was going to be what God was saying, but she had faith in God enough to know, God, you see me and I trust you and I'm going to do what it is that you have called me to do. And God gave her this promise in the wilderness. So when we have the times where we are not in the best places, when we are not in the right space, when we are not financially where we want to be, we're not mentally where we want to be, we're not in our relationships where we want to be, God still sees you and he can still give you a promise. Your responsibility is to be obedient to what it is that he is telling you to do in that season and in that moment. He's not always going to speak to you when times are good. And we're not always supposed to praise, worship, and honor him when times are good. It's supposed to be in all things at all times. And so God accepted this name enough to put it in his word. He accepted that he was the God who saw her and that he said, you know what? I'm going to put this for everlasting and everlasting. So my children will always know that when they call on this name, they know that I see them. And so it's significant for us to honor that because again, when God sees you, he doesn't unsee you. Um, and it didn't need to be repeated. And so she returns with the promise of faith. And then she also knows that he sees her. And she now has a promise just not for herself, but also for her child. I'm looking at my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's see. Oh, this is another thing. And this has nothing to do with the name. But when I was reading this, the story of Hagar always reminds me that the people that we are connected to can put us in some mess that we didn't ask to be in. Hagar did not ask to sleep with Abraham. Hagar did not ask to become impregnated by Abraham. Hagar did not ask to bear Abraham's child. Hagar did not ask to birth Abraham's child. Hagar did not ask to raise Abraham's child. She was told. And this is her situation and circumstances based on who she was connected to. So sometimes we get ourselves in positions and we get ourselves in issues, not because of our own merit, but just because who we are connected to. So be sure that the people that you are connected to are not going to put you in some mess that's going to have you out in the wilderness later on, or that's going to have them trying to kick you out of everything that you know because now they're jealous, or because now they don't like it, or because now they have a problem with it. Who you are connected to is very important. And so Hagar's story always reminds me who I'm connected to can get me in some stuff that don't have nothing to do with me. And I don't need to be out in nobody's wilderness based on somebody else's mess. So please, that ain't got nothing to do with the name. But when I was doing my study, that was something that stood out to me. And whenever I hear the story of Hagar, that always is a reminder for me. And those are my notes. It's not a lot, it's not long, but that's what I have. So I'm gonna stop this recording and then we are going to have a conversation.